"Excuse me, can I sit here? I'm really tired." The words barely rose above the low hum of the coffee shop, but they sliced through the silence at Lucas Blake's table like a whisper in a church. He looked up from his espresso, untouched and growing colder by the minute. The cup still steamed faintly, but like everything else lately, it felt distant. She stood there, small and trembling. No taller than the height of the chair beside him, maybe 3 years old. A pink woolen hat clung to her head, slightly crooked, covering the edges of wispy, thinning hair. Her coat was too big for her frame, sleeves swallowing her hands. In one of them, she clutched a faded teddy bear by the arm. Its fur had once been white. Lucas blinked, not sure if he had heard her right. He glanced around, expecting to see a parent rushing up behind her. But no one came. "Are you lost?" he asked, his voice rough from disuse. The girl shook her head. "No. Just tired." She didn't wait for an answer, just pulled herself up into the chair across from him with effort, her little legs dangling far from the floor. Lucas stared, stunned into stillness. The corner table was tucked away, usually avoided for its view of the alley. He always chose it for that reason. People didn't bother him there. Until now. The girl set her teddy on the table gently, patting its threadbare head. Then she looked at Lucas with wide, weary eyes. "Your coffee's gonna get cold," she said matter-of-factly. He almost laughed. Almost. Instead, he took a sip to hide the burning questions rising in his chest. "What's your name?" he asked cautiously. "Lila," she said. "What's yours?" "Lucas." "Like the sky," she said, nodding in approval. He blinked again. "The sky. Yeah, like the stars. Sounds like a star name." She tilted her head. "Are you famous?" He choked on his coffee. "No. Definitely not." She gave him a long look, then whispered, "You look rich though." Lucas smiled, despite himself. She was sharp. Too sharp for 3. Or maybe 4. "And how would you know what rich looks like?" he asked. She pointed at his watch. "That brand costs a lot on the TV." He turned it slightly on his wrist, letting the metal catch the light. He had forgotten he was wearing it. It had been a gift from his wife. From Clara. The thought passed like a shadow across his face. Lila noticed. "Are you sad?" she asked. Lucas didn't answer. She leaned forward and cupped her mouth like she was telling a secret. "I get sad a lot too. Especially when it's noisy inside." He frowned. "Noisy?" She tapped her chest. "In here. When it feels heavy. But Teddy helps." Lucas looked down at the frayed bear and nodded slowly. "Do your mom or dad know you're sitting here?" he asked finally, gently. "My mom's getting medicine. She told me to wait in the corner, but the bench was hard." She pointed vaguely toward the front of the cafe. "Your chair looked softer." Lucas glanced over to the front counter. There was no woman in sight. No one even seemed to be looking for her. "How long ago did she leave?" he asked. Lila shrugged. "A while. Maybe 10 songs ago." His eyes flicked to the playlist on the coffee shop's overhead speakers. A chill ran through him. 10 songs was nearly half an hour. He stood up slightly, scanning the shop. No frantic mother. No hospital bag. Just the baristas chatting, and a handful of regulars tapping at laptops. "Do you come here a lot?" he asked. Lila nodded. "Only when mommy's tired." "And your dad?" Her smile faded. "He left when I was still in mommy's belly." Lucas swallowed hard. The air around him felt heavier now. "What's wrong with the medicine she's getting?" he asked, voice soft. Lila played with the bear's foot, eyes lowered. "It's not for her. It's for me. The one that helps the whitecoats check my blood." Lucas froze. He had seen that look before. He had watched a woman he loved grow pale and tired and brave in the face of impossible things. He had lived in waiting rooms, stared at 4 drips, learned every inch of hospitals. "Are you sick, Lila?" he asked. She nodded once, then reached into the pocket of her coat. She pulled out a crumpled candy wrapper and smoothed it on the table. "I saved the shiny ones," she said. "They remind me of stars." Lucas didn't speak. His throat felt too tight. Just then, the bell above the cafe door jingled. A woman burst through, young, exhausted, and frantic. Her coat flapped behind her as she looked around desperately. "Lila!" she cried. Lila perked up and waved. "I'm over here, Mommy." The woman rushed over, eyes full of panic, and then, relief. She dropped to her knees beside the table. "Oh my God," she whispered. "I told you not to move. You scared me." "She was tired," Lucas said gently. "She asked to sit. I thought you might be nearby." The woman looked at him properly now, still catching her breath. Her eyes widened, just slightly. Recognition flickered. He'd seen it before, when people matched his face to the business magazines or interviews they'd read about but never cared to finish. You're Lucas Blake, right?" He gave a small nod. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "I didn't mean to bother you. Lila she's friendly. She talks to everyone." Lucas shook his head. "She's fine. More than fine." The woman stood, pulling Lila gently from the chair. "Say thank you, baby." Lila hugged her teddy and looked up at him. "Will you be here tomorrow?" she asked. "I might," Lucas said, surprising himself. She smiled. "Okay. I'll bring you a star wrapper." They walked out into the cold. The door shut behind them with a soft click. Lucas sat alone again. But the espresso didn't taste bitter anymore. Still, as he reached for it, he saw something left behind on the table. A second candy wrapper. Not crumpled. Not dirty. Just resting there, shiny and gold, with 4 words scrawled in wobbly pen. "You looked really lonely." He stared at it for a long time. Long enough not to notice the man in a dark coat watching him from across the street. And that man wasn't watching Lucas. He was watching Lila. Lucas couldn't shake the image of the gold wrapper. "You looked really lonely." The words pressed on him long after Lila and her mother vanished into the cold morning. He turned the wrapper over in his hand again and again, the faint scent of peppermint clinging to it. She had seen something in him. Something he hadn't let anyone else see. Not in months. Not since Clara. His phone buzzed against the table. "Meeting in 20 minutes. You coming?" "Tessa, executive assistant." He stared at the screen for a moment, then silenced it. "No. Not today." He rose from the table, slipped the wrapper into his coat pocket, and made his way outside. The wind cut sharper now, as if winter had returned just for him. His driver waited at the curb, but Lucas waved him off. He needed to walk. He needed to think. He didn't notice the man until he was halfway down the block. A figure in a charcoal trench coat leaned against a lamppost across the street, face hidden beneath a baseball cap. Lucas felt the gaze before he saw the man. That eerie, unmistakable sensation of being studied. Their eyes met. The man didn't look away. Lucas slowed, uncertain. The man held a small flip phone to his ear, the kind no one used anymore unless they wanted to avoid being traced. His lips moved silently, but his eyes stayed locked on Lucas. Then the man turned and disappeared into the alley. Lucas stood frozen. Something about it didn't sit right. He stepped off the curb, instinct pulling him forward. Across town, in a cramped, sterile apartment above a shuttered tailor shop, Lila coughed into a tissue until it turned crimson at the edge. Her mother, Emily, pressed a cold compress to her daughter's forehead, trying to remain calm. "You're okay, baby," she murmured, her voice steady but her eyes glassy. "It's just the air. We'll use the machine again, okay?" Lila nodded weakly and reached for her teddy. Emily adjusted the humidifier, blinking hard as she glanced at the nearly empty pill bottle on the counter. She'd stretched the prescriptions further than she should have. There wouldn't be enough to last the week. Rent was overdue. Again. And this morning's errand to the clinic had ended in disappointment. The charity vouchers had dried up. They were out of options. Lila smiled up at her. Mommy. Yes, sweet pea. I saw a lonely man today. Emily ran a hand through her tangled hair. Oh. He was nice. He smiled, but his eyes didn't mean it. Emily paused. He looked like he wanted to talk to someone, but forgot how. There was silence between them for a moment. Then Lila added, he had stars on his wrist. Emily blinked. What do you mean? The watch. It sparkled like the ones in your magazines. From the company that helps computers. Emily's breath caught. Lila. She began, slowly. That man, was his name Lucas? Lila smiled sleepily. Yup. Lucas Sky. Emily's blood went cold. Lucas Blake. There was no mistaking it. The founder of Blake Systems. The same man who'd once filled magazine covers with his dazzling grin and philanthropic promises. The same man her sister had worked for before she disappeared. Her older sister. Hannah. The one who had vanished 3 years ago without a trace. Lucas turned into the alley cautiously. It was empty. Just dumpsters, graffiti, and an old ladder bolted to the side of a fire escape. He stood there, staring into the shadows, feeling the chill deeper now. The man was gone. But something on the ground caught his eye. A scrap of torn paper, half trampled and dirty. He bent down and picked it up. A child's drawing. Crayons on notebook paper, a little girl with a round pink hat, holding hands with a tall man. The man's face was smudged, but the watch on his wrist was clear, glittering gold and blue. Above their heads, in blocky letters, were 4 words. My new daddy Lucas. His heart slammed against his ribs. He spun around, suddenly breathless. How long had that man been watching? And how had Lila drawn this before she ever knew his name? Lucas didn't remember walking back to his penthouse. The image haunted him, the crayon drawing folded tightly in his pocket. My new daddy Lucas. He tossed his keys into the bowl by the door and stood there, staring at nothing. Why would a little girl draw him like that? And how would she know his name before her mother had spoken it? Had she seen him in the news? On a screen? Possibly. But the way she looked at him, it hadn't been recognition. It had been familiarity. As if she knew him. He dropped into the armchair beside the window, loosened his tie, and reached for the folder that had been sitting unopened on the coffee table for weeks. Clara's final medical report. He had never read it. Couldn't bring himself to. Until now. His fingers hovered over the flap. But then, his phone buzzed again. Tessa. You skipped the board again. They're getting antsy. You okay? He typed a quick reply. Postpone everything. Indefinitely. And shut the phone off. Then, from the corner of his eye, he noticed something strange. The building's security feed, displayed on a muted monitor across the room, was showing archived footage. Someone had accessed the system remotely. He leaned in. There, frozen on the screen, was a time-stamped image from earlier that morning. A still of him sitting in the cafe, facing Lila. Her pink hat clearly visible. And behind them, a shadow in the glass window. The man in the trench coat. Lucas stood, crossed the room, and rewound the footage. Click. Click. There. Again. The man had been watching them from outside. Not just observing, filming. Someone had accessed this footage after Lucas returned home. And not from inside the apartment. Across the city, Emily paced the floor, phone trembling in her hand. She had called the number twice. No answer. She tried again. Still no answer. Her thoughts were a tangled blur of panic and hope. Lucas Blake. Hannah's old employer. The man who disappeared from headlines after his wife died. And now, Lila was drawing him before even hearing his name? She opened her old email account, the one she hadn't touched in years. Searched for Hannah's final message. One line. If anything happens, it's because I found something I shouldn't have. Attached was a single document. A company memo. From Blake Systems. Marked confidential. Emily had never dared open it. Until now. She clicked it open. Her hand flew to her mouth. It wasn't just about company policy. It was a list of names, dates, transfers, disappearances, including Hannah's. Her sister's name was next to a redacted note. One word was left uncensored. Termination. She slammed the laptop shut, heart pounding. Was Lucas involved in this? Or had he been lied to, too? "Mommy," Lila whispered from the bed. "Can I tell you a secret?" Emily turned, her face pale. "Of course, baby." Lila sat up slowly. Her cheeks were flushed. "The man outside the shop. He took my picture." Emily's blood ran cold. "What man?" "The one with the gray coat." He smiled, but his eyes didn't. "I didn't like him." Emily wrapped her arms around her daughter. "Did you tell me this before?" Lila shook her head. "I was scared. He knew my name." Emily's breath caught. "What?" he said. "Lila Grace, you've grown up so fast." "But, Mommy, I never met him before." Emily squeezed her eyes shut, pulling Lila closer. She had to find out what Hannah discovered. She had to know what Blake Systems had been hiding, and whether Lucas was still a part of it. But first, she needed to protect her daughter. Even if that meant disappearing again. Back at the penthouse, Lucas scrolled through Clara's old research files, desperate to distract himself, but a document name made him stop cold. Project Grace Protocol. He clicked it open. Encrypted. Password protected. He tried Clara's name. Nothing. Then tried the word that had been etched on the wrapper Lila left behind. Lonely. Access granted. His heart pounded as the file unfolded before him. Dozens of lines. Notes. Test results. And one photo. Of Clara. Holding a newborn. The caption read, "Subject G. 7 delivered. Monitored for developmental anomaly. Placement scheduled." The baby in her arms had a mark on her left wrist. A small birthmark, shaped like a crescent moon. Lucas's breath left him in one ragged gust. That birthmark. Lila had the same one. He had seen it when she lifted her sleeve at the cafe. The child his wife had once held had not been theirs. And yet somehow, she was now calling him Daddy in crayon dreams. At that exact moment, across the city, a burner phone buzzed in a motel drawer. A man in a trench coat picked it up. He answered without a word. A voice on the other end crackled. "She made contact with him. We didn't authorize that." The man's voice was like gravel. "Too late now. She remembers." A pause. "What about Blake?" The man looked out the window toward the skyline. "Sooner or later," he said, "he'll remember everything too." Then he clicked the phone shut and began loading his gun. The night sky blanketed the city in an eerie hush, its stars blurred by the haze of streetlights and secrets. Lucas stood in the center of his penthouse office, staring at the image on the screen. Clara, cradling an infant. Subject G. 7 delivered. Placement scheduled. The baby's face was impossible to see clearly. Partially obscured, pixelated, but the crescent-shaped birthmark on the wrist was clear. And he knew. Somehow, he knew. Lila wasn't just any little girl. She had been part of something Clara had hidden. Something Blake Systems had hidden. His company. His wife. His world. He sat down hard, chest heaving. A quiet knock interrupted the silence. Lucas turned toward the door. It opened slowly. Tessa stood there, his executive assistant. Loyal. Sharp. Always calm. But now her face was pale. "There's someone downstairs," she said. Says she has information about your wife. She won't give a name, but she said you'd want to hear it. Lucas rose. Where is she? I brought her to the private conference room. He followed without a word, every nerve tense. When they reached the glass-walled room on the 43rd floor, he froze in the doorway. Emily. She looked exactly like Hannah. Older, worn, tired, but unmistakable. He stepped inside. You're her sister. She nodded. You remember. I remember you from the wedding. You were the wild one, he said, voice low. Always laughing. Always looking over your shoulder like someone was chasing you. Turns out someone was, she said quietly. Still is. Lucas took a slow breath. Is Lila your daughter? Emily hesitated. Yes. But not biologically. Lucas's eyes darkened. What does that mean? She was born in a clinic. Not a hospital. Funded by one of your old research subsidiaries. Hannah was part of it before she vanished. I didn't know what she was working on, until she sent me the memo. Lucas motioned for her to sit. Tell me everything. Emily sat slowly. They called it the Grace Protocol. A study meant to examine artificial gestation and cognitive acceleration, under the umbrella of future medicine. But it wasn't just medicine. It was genetic manipulation. Infants raised outside conventional systems. Babies with enhanced immune response, advanced neural patterning, monitored from conception. Lucas leaned forward, shaken. Are you saying Clara, my wife, was involved? More than involved, Emily whispered. She was the only one they trusted to carry the first success to term. She chose to do it herself. Lucas's chest constricted. She delivered the child, he said. Emily nodded. But something went wrong. Or maybe right. I don't know. She hid the girl, got her out of the system. Hannah helped her. She looked him dead in the eye. That girl is Lila. Lucas leaned back, stunned. She's not just a little girl with a weak immune system. She's the only one who made it out. Emily's hands trembled. And now they want her back. That same night, in the motel across town, the man in the trench coat, known only as Beck, cleaned the barrel of his silenced pistol. A faint click echoed as he loaded the final round. A laptop screen glowed beside him, displaying a map of Lucas Blake's residence. Another window showed security footage, looped, hacked, controlled. He clicked to a different tab. Lila's face. A video recording from the cafe. Enhanced. Zoomed. He zoomed in again, on the mark on her wrist. Crescent-shaped. Identical to the records he had been sent. He spoke into his burner phone. She's confirmed. Active. Mark is visible. A voice responded in a filtered growl. Retrieve. Eliminate the woman. Wipe the man if he resists. Beck zipped up his duffel bag and opened the case beside it. Inside, non-lethal darts. Tranquilizers. Zip ties. He wouldn't need all of it. Just enough to get the girl. Lucas sat in silence after Emily finished. You're telling me my wife faked a pregnancy, delivered a genetically modified child in secret, and then vanished from the project? She didn't fake it, Emily said. She was pregnant. But not with her egg. Not with yours. The embryo was created in a lab. Clara agreed to be the host. His heart twisted. She never told me, he whispered. She couldn't, Emily said. The people involved, some of them were your investors. Clara trusted almost no one. Not even you. Lucas rose to his feet, eyes cold with realization. That man, outside the cafe. He was watching Lila. He knew her name. Emily nodded. He's not the first. Lucas ran a hand through his hair. Why now? Because she's growing, Emily said. And whatever they put inside her, they want to see what it becomes. Lucas looked out the window. Their mistake, he said, voice steel, was letting her live long enough to find me. Far below, in the shadows outside the skyscraper, Beck stood on the rooftop of a nearby building. Through his scope, he watched the conference room. 2 figures. 1 man. 1 woman. The girl wasn't there. Good. He raised his radio. Confirming target. Moving to intercept at residence. Then he turned toward the fire escape and disappeared into the night. Back in the apartment, Lila sat curled up on the couch, drawing another picture in silence. This time, it was a house. Tall and glowing, with a door shaped like a heart. Inside the door was a figure in a blue suit. A man. Outside, 2 shadows watched him. And in the sky, a red X. Lila set the crayon down. I don't want to go back to the white rooms, she whispered to the empty room. Then she turned to the window. And said something no one should have heard her say. I remember you now. Rain began to fall just after midnight, tapping softly against the glass of Lucas's penthouse. The city below blurred under the downpour, red taillights smeared like streaks of blood across the wet streets. Lila sat curled beneath a blanket, her small frame barely visible among the folds. The drawing lay in front of her on the coffee table, a patchwork of colors and symbols only she understood. Lucas stood nearby, arms crossed, staring at her as if trying to read her mind. She's remembering things, Emily said quietly beside him. Things I don't think she should. Lucas didn't take his eyes off the child. You said she was part of something more than just genetic research. Emily hesitated. There were rumors that she was designed not only to survive illness, but to sense things. What kind of things? I don't know, Emily whispered. But Hannah used to say Lila was awake in ways no one understood. That her brain lit up like fireworks in scans. That she dreamed of people she hadn't met, described faces she'd never seen. Lucas's stomach turned. I didn't believe her, Emily admitted. Not until last week. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small voice recorder, pressing play. Lila's voice crackled through the speaker, recorded in a sleepy murmur. He wears a gray coat and black gloves. He stands in the rain and doesn't blink. He smells like metal. He doesn't knock. He just comes in. Lucas froze. That was 2 days before they saw the man at the cafe. The man in the trench coat. The man who didn't blink. Emily hit stop. She's seeing them before they come, she said. Like she's been through it already. Lucas moved to the table and knelt in front of Lila. Hey, he said softly. Can I see your picture? Lila nodded and slid it toward him. He studied it. The tall glowing house. The red X in the sky. The blue-suited man inside. And outside, 2 dark figures with no faces. He looked up at her. Who are these? Her voice was barely a whisper. The ones who wait. They were there before I was born. What do they want? To finish the experiment. Emily's breath hitched. Lucas steadied his voice. And the man inside the house. That's me. Lila shook her head. No. He blinked. No. That's my daddy, she said firmly. Not just now. From before. Lucas's heart dropped into his stomach. Before. He had never met Lila before last week. He sat back, stunned, as Lila pulled another piece of paper from her bag. This one was older. Folded. Faded. She handed it to him carefully, like it mattered more than anything else in the world. Lucas opened it slowly. It was a photograph. A printed scan from a hospital monitor. An ultrasound. Marked, subject G, 7, 12 weeks. But it wasn't the image that shook him. It was the sticky note taped to the corner. In Clara's handwriting. If anything happens to me, she's yours. Her name is Lila. Lucas's breath caught. His hands trembled. Clara had known. She had planned for this. Emily sat beside him now, her voice tight. You didn't know. But she wanted you to. Why didn't she tell me? Because the people behind this would have killed her. They almost did. Lucas stared at the note. A lifetime of unanswered questions cracked open. Then Lila stood. She walked to the window slowly, peered into the storm, and pointed. He's coming. Lucas bolted to the window. Nothing. Just shadows and rain. Who? He asked. Lila's voice was calm. The man who smells like metal. Across the street, Beck stood beneath an awning, eyes locked on the penthouse. He raised a small device, pressed a button. In Lucas's building, the security feed blinked once, and went dark. Beck pulled gloves over his hands and stepped out into the street. Upstairs, the lights flickered. Lucas turned sharply. Generator. Emily shook her head. No. That's. A loud click echoed through the apartment. Lucas pulled open a drawer and drew a locked case. Inside, a Glock 17. He checked the chamber with practiced hands. Emily grabbed Lila, holding her tight. Then the door handle moved. Not a knock. Just pressure. A slow, careful twist. Lucas raised the gun. Get behind the couch. Emily obeyed, shielding Lila beneath her coat. Then, nothing. Silence. For a full 10 seconds, the world held its breath. Lucas crept toward the door, gun steady. Then something slid under the door. A single envelope. No return address. He picked it up and tore it open. Inside was a photo. Of Clara. Alive. The timestamp. Yesterday. And scrawled across the bottom, in red ink. She's not dead. But she will be. Unless you bring the girl. The photo burned in Lucas's hands. Clara. Alive. Eyes swollen, but alert. Her face pressed to a cement wall streaked with rust. A timestamp in the corner. Yesterday, 9:16 p.m. They had her. All this time, they had her. Emily was beside him, clutching Lila tightly, her face white with disbelief. She's alive, Lucas said, as if saying it out loud would force it to be true. She vanished after the project ended, Emily whispered. Everyone thought she ran. That maybe she couldn't take what she'd done. Lucas shook his head. She didn't run. She was taken. He looked down at the words on the photo. She's not dead. But she will be. Unless you bring the girl. Lila. Lucas stared at the child hiding under the coat, her bear clutched tightly to her chest. She looked up at him, calm but alert. Watching. She didn't ask what the photo said. She already knew. They want her back, Emily said. And they know you're the only one who can deliver her. Lucas turned, mind racing. He thought of the files Clara had hidden. The name of the project. Grace Protocol. The encrypted logs. The test reports. Clara had kept it all quiet, kept Lila hidden, even from him. But why? Because Clara had known something the others didn't. Because Lila wasn't just a product of the experiment. She was the key to something far more powerful. And now, that power was waking up. A black SUV pulled into the underground garage beneath the facility known to only a handful of people in the world. Beck stepped out, tossing his coat into the trunk before striding through a pair of reinforced security doors. He moved like a man born in a lab, every step measured, every breath under control. Down 2 levels, past retinal scans and biometric locks, he entered a narrow corridor lit by humming fluorescents. A thick metal door loomed at the end. He keyed in a code. The door hissed open. Inside, Clara sat in the corner of a concrete room, shackled at the ankle, wrists raw from rope burns. Her once shiny auburn hair was matted. Her eyes flared at the sight of him. You're wasting time, she snapped. You think Lucas will just hand her over? Beck didn't flinch. He'll come. He won't. He will, Beck said, stepping into the room. Because he thinks he still loves you. Clara's jaw tightened. Does he know? Beck asked, voice silked in threat. That she's not really yours? She is mine. Beck tilted his head. Then why didn't you tell him? Clara didn't respond. Because even you were afraid, he said. Afraid of what she might become. Clara's voice was low. You should be afraid. Beck smiled. Don't worry. I am. Lucas moved quickly, tearing through files in his encrypted drive. Dates. Lab reports. Video files Clara had hidden. Then he found one labeled simply. Answer. He opened it. A dimly lit room. Clara stood before the camera, pale, trembling. If you're seeing this, then they found me. Lucas, I wanted to tell you everything. I tried. But I was scared. I didn't know who was watching. Who was listening. Lila isn't just part of the project. She's the whole thing. She's the reason they started it. She stepped closer. They didn't want to cure cancer. Or save children. They wanted control. A new generation of minds. Programmable from birth. Capable of pattern recognition far beyond human range. But Lila was different. She resisted. She looked away. She dreams. She remembers things before they happen. She sees people no one else can. They called it temporal leakage in the files, but I think it's something more. Something divine. A long pause. She called you Daddy before she even met you. That wasn't coincidence. Lucas, she knew you before she ever existed. The screen went black. Lucas sat in silence, pulse thundering. Emily's voice broke the quiet. Then she's not just their creation. She's a signal. Lucas stood. They want a weapon, he said. What they don't understand is. He looked toward the hallway. She's not a weapon. In the corner of the apartment, Lila sat cross-legged on the floor, eyes closed. Her hands rested on her knees. The room around her grew still. Then her lips moved. She's at the place with the white lights and the dripping ceiling. The people there wear black coats but not on the inside. The inside is metal. They want to take me there, but they're afraid. Emily knelt beside her. Afraid of what, baby? Lila opened her eyes. Of what I'll remember. Lucas finished reassembling the SIG rifle and slung the strap over his shoulder. Emily watched him from the hallway, torn between fear and trust. She's not going with you, she said. I'm not taking her, Lucas replied. But they need to believe I am. And what happens when they find out you're lying? He met her eyes. Then they'll realize they've made a bigger mistake. He checked the magazine, then stuffed the photograph of Clara into his coat. You're walking into a trap, Emily warned. Lucas nodded. I know. Then why go? Because if Clara's alive, I have to bring her home. He turned to Lila. You stay here. Lock the doors. No one opens them unless it's me. Lila didn't answer. She just looked at him, long and deep. Then she whispered, Be careful, Daddy. Lucas froze. She had never called him that before. Not out loud. Then she handed him something. The first wrapper. The one from the cafe. He opened it. The back had new words, drawn in blue crayon. Follow the stars. She's waiting. He looked at her, stunned. How did you? But Lila had already closed her eyes again. And somewhere far below, beneath 10 layers of concrete and steel, Clara Blake felt the warmth return to her fingers for the first time in weeks. As if someone had lit a candle in the dark. The rain hadn't stopped, but Lucas didn't wait for it to pass. His car sped through the empty streets like a bullet, slicing through the city's sleeping heart. On the seat beside him lay the photo of Clara, his wife, not a memory but alive. And in his coat pocket, the candy wrapper. Follow the stars. She's waiting. He didn't understand how Lila knew. He wasn't sure he wanted to understand. But he believed her. His GPS led him toward a restricted industrial zone, long abandoned by the public, now repurposed under shadow contracts and black budget programs. He turned down a back road. At the far end, a gated complex sat beneath flickering lights. No guards. No signs. Just a single silver door. He parked, slung the rifle over his shoulder, and walked forward without hesitation. A red light scanned his face as he approached. Then the door clicked open. He stepped inside. Far below the surface, Clara counted her heartbeats. Not to calm herself, but to remember she still had one. Beck hadn't returned since their last conversation. She could hear movement above her. Someone was coming. She didn't know if it was rescue, or the end. Her thoughts flickered to Lucas. To the man she had loved fiercely, and lied to out of fear. To the child she had carried, protected, and passed on like a secret kept too long. She closed her eyes. Please, she thought. Just let him know the truth. Lucas descended the narrow hallway, guided by low lights embedded in the floor. No alarms. No resistance. They wanted him to come. At the end of the corridor, another door opened automatically. Inside, Beck waited, armed, calm. The room behind him was dark, but Lucas saw her. Chained. Alive. Clara. His voice cracked. Clara. She looked up, and the look in her eyes shattered something in him. Lucas, she breathed. Beck raised a hand. Move slowly. You're here as requested. Let's not complicate things. Lucas's jaw tightened. Let her go. Beck tilted his head. Where's the girl? Lucas took a slow step forward. She's safe. Wrong answer. Beck raised his weapon. Lucas didn't flinch. If you shoot me, you'll never find her. And you won't find the data Clara hid. The girl's not just valuable to you. She's the only one who can shut down what you started. Beck blinked. Shut it down. Lucas nodded. She remembers the root protocols. The seed code. Clara gasped. How do you know that? She told me. Impossible. Lucas took another step. She wrote it. On a wrapper. She's been dreaming of you, Clara. Of this place. Beck's composure cracked, just slightly. Lucas struck. A single movement. Gun drawn. Shot fired. Beck staggered back, hit in the leg. Lucas rushed forward, knocked the gun away, and shoved Beck against the wall. You wanted a weapon, he growled. You created a child. Beck grunted. She's not a child. She's a... Lucas punched him once, hard, silencing him. Then he turned to Clara, unlocking the shackle. Her arms fell around him before she could stand. I didn't want you to find out this way, she whispered. I don't care, he whispered back. You're alive. They ran. Outside, the rain slowed to a mist. At the penthouse, Lila stood by the window again. Emily paced nearby, wringing her hands. You're sure he's okay? She asked. Lila nodded. He'll find her. Emily crouched down. How do you know that? Lila's answer came quietly. Because he always did. Lucas and Clara emerged into the cold night. He loaded her into the car, drove away fast, not looking back. But someone else was watching. From a rooftop. Beck, wounded but not dead, pressed a fresh gauze to his leg, face tight with rage. He whispered into his radio. They're gone. Confirming extraction failed. A cold voice responded. We don't need them. The child is evolving. Begin phase 2. Beck's eyes narrowed. And if she resists? The voice crackled back. Then we remind her who made her. Back at the penthouse, Clara stood at the doorway. She stared at Lila. And Lila stared back. No words. Just two souls once separated, now whole again. Then Lila walked over, slow and certain. She reached into her pocket, pulled out the very first candy wrapper. She handed it to Clara. Clara turned it over. In blue crayon, Lila had written. "Thank you for choosing me." Tears welled in Clara's eyes. Lila reached up and touched Clara's cheek. "You can rest now," she said softly. "He remembers. And I do too." Later that night, when the world went still again, Lucas stood alone on the balcony, watching the clouds part. The stars blinked through. One. Then two. Then more. He looked down at the newest drawing Lila had made. A home. A real one. With light in every window. And 3 people inside. Not broken. Not alone. Not anymore. He smiled for the first time in a long, long time. But deep inside, he knew. This wasn't the end. Somewhere out there, in the silence beyond science, in the space between memory and miracle, something else was waking up. And one day soon, it would come looking for her. But when it did, it would find her waiting. Not alone. But with the one word no experiment could ever control. Family.